Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of From the District with State Senator Suzanne Weber, joined as always by our illustrious state senator, who actually is in the district. So this is literally from the district. Senator, how are you?
Hey, I'm doing just fine. It's 8 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
Already been for a walk with the dog in the rain. And
Yeah.
you just can't get any better.
Oh, okay. Let's go with that. I would love to do a lot of small talk, but we got a lot of stuff to get to in a short amount of time. So let's get started on. We got some good news and we got some bad news about some bills that are working their way through the system. Let's start with the bad. Let's start with the bad news. Let's start with the bad news so that we can end a happy note.
Yeah, let's go to House Bill 3075.
Yes,
is that where you'd like to start?
3075. Well, no, but we got to. This is, folks might remember, Measure 114, which was an anti-Second Amendment gun control bill that passed just barely by about a point and a half in 2022, has been caught up in a bunch of legal wranglings. Just recently, the Court of Appeals has allowed it to move forward, but we fully suspect that it's going to be appealed to the Supreme Court. But Representative Krupp from Bend has brought some additional restrictions implementing Measure 114. Let's talk about that.
Yes, this is a lengthy bill. Let me tell you, lots of pages, lots of requirements. And it talks specifically about things that were in 114 that haven't gone forward, and it modifies the permit process.
Mm-hmm.
And
doubles the cost of a permit.
Yes, and it specifies where a person can apply for a permit.
Mm-hmm.
To purchase a firearm, and it also adds additional eligibility requirements. And it talks about the information on the application and the criminal background check, which is also involved in it, and it moves the time from 30 days to 60 days.
Yeah, that's your office, one of the big things that we get in your office is dealing with bureaucracy, dealing with permits, dealing with licenses, and one of the big ones is trying to push through the requirements around getting a concealed carry permit.
Right. And I get calls from folks that have purchased the guns and can't get them because of all of the red tape, that can take months to process and get, and we have people not getting any answers when they inquire. It's a huge mess, and this just falls into another one of those issues where they want to raise fees in order to raise revenue and to make it difficult for people to be able to do business in the state.
Yeah, I'm looking at the bill really quick, and one thing that I notice here as is interesting is that even though this doubles the cost of a permit, there's no 3/5 majority requirement.
That's another thing. The majority is not required.
Yeah, I think so. In the state of Oregon, in order to raise revenue, you need to have 3/5 majority at both houses. I believe there is some court precedent on there that means only new revenue. So an increase of a fee would not count, even though you're doubling it. I think probably most people would say, well, you probably don't need 3/5 to raise at the cost of living or some 2-3%, but doubling it, holy smokes, that's
and I'll tell you that Oregon has done a terrific job of raising fees. I think in a meeting I had on Wednesday, we discovered that in the last long session, I believe, we raised fees on things 551 times.
And that's
So,
crazy.
That's crazy.
But particularly because we just had the revenue report, the revenue predictions forecast come out here a few weeks ago, and you guys have over $1 billion more coming at you than you expected.
Yes. However, it's not something that people are looking at joyfully. They're looking at it thinking, oh my gosh, then the next one's going to be way down and we're not going to be able to have the money to be able to provide the services. And so everyone is being extremely, and I've got this in quotations, cautious about how they're going to be looking at budgets, because we're just not going to have enough money. But and I know that Oregon has never had a revenue problem. They've never had a revenue problem. They have a spending problem. Right.
That is true. So doubling fees, certainly. So this whole bill is obviously a problem. It would not surprise me if this actually triggered another legal challenge, because you are changing some things of Measure 114. So does that open up the whole measure up to another legal challenge even after it goes to the Supreme Court?
Right.
See.
I'm sure that the Supreme Court will weigh in eventually on that, but that's going to create a string of dominoes that affects all kinds of things.
Right. So this bill, the public hearing has already happened. So I know a lot of people came and testified against it. Thank you very much for being there. It is scheduled for a work session on April 2nd. So I would encourage everybody to look up the House Committee, not the Senate, the House Committee on
House Committee.
Yes. House Committee on Judiciary, and click that, and it'll go to olis.oregonlegislature.gov. You can go to committees, look up the House Committee on Judiciary, and it'll list all the members, and you can email them and encourage them to vote no on HB 3075. If it does pass, and I think we've both been in politics for a long time, it probably will. You still have another chance. It'll be headed to the Senate if it passes. So hopefully we can slow it down there. Of course, the other side does have a supermajority, so if they all hang together, they can essentially do what they want. But doesn't mean we can't put up a stink.
Right.
So another bad bill that actually started in the House, we talked about this, I think, last week, SB 916. This bill did get voted on, did pass the Senate. This would make it so that if you are in a union and you strike, you can collect unemployment at the same time. So it takes away the incentive not to strike. So it did pass, but some stuff happened.
There was and one of the things that happened was that in spite of all of the opposing testimony, everything went forward, but we filed a minority report on it. And a minority report challenges the bill, and it also adds another opportunity to make sure that the bill can actually be just, be fair, make sense. And so the minority report was filed by the Republicans, Senator Bonham, and it had I can't exactly tell you exactly what it was that anyway, it made it much more palatable. And it was voted down. And then after a lot of debate, it went to the vote, and it was approved. but there were several people. In fact, there was even one Democratic member who voted against it because of the fact that what it is going to do to our taxpayers. Because ultimately, it's the taxpayers that are going to be responsible for this in the case of strike.
Yeah. So let's just
can you? Yeah,
you
know the steps of the minority report far better than I do.
It was it looked like there were actually a couple of Democrats who voted
yes,
against it. Senator Solomon,
yes,
who is from Hillsborough, and then Senator Golden from Southern Oregon.
Yeah, and
both probably would be considered more centrist type.
I gave my time to Senator Solomon to be able to speak on the floor for it.
Yeah, I know you and Senator Solomon, of course, you don't agree on a lot of things.
No, we don't.
Should have a positive relationship and get along well. But yeah, I just want to go under the hood a little bit about minority reports, how they work, why we do them.
I've only done them twice, but there are a whole series of steps and there's very strict time constraints. Who has to initiate it? You have to have 2 no votes in committee, and then you've got an hour after that, and I mean it's very precise as to how it happens.
As you can imagine, these aren't fun for the staff.
No,
these are put a lot of strain on the staff because of the time frame. So somebody introduces a bill and it goes through a committee. Usually somebody else, in order to make it better, will introduce an amendment to the bill, and maybe that amendment just fixes a few things, maybe it totally guts it and does something different, but a member will vote, will introduce an amendment. That amendment then is not accepted or it's voted down, and then the original bill is voted on and it passes. At that point, one of the members of the side who voted no, and there has to be at least 2.
There has to be 2.
Has to declare or have to orally declare, I intend to file a minority report.
Yes.
And that takes it usually takes the amendment that you are going to use, usually.
Right.
And files that as usually file that as a minority report. And there's usually 2 reasons that you do a minority report. These days, it's usually for messaging reasons, because you want to get up and you want to make a case to the body and make a case to...
When you're in the minority,
right,
that is usually the reason.
Right. So you want to get up and you want it to be known, you want to put it on the legislative record that this is what it should be, and give everybody a chance, for the entire body then to vote for the minority report. Because you have the committee report, which is the majority, and the minority report, and you have there's a report on every bill. So the other reason is that you believe, and I don't think I've ever seen this happen in 25 years of Oregon politics. Gosh, 25 years.
25 years. Oh, yeah.
Been a long go. I don't think I've ever seen this happen, but it could. Is that a member believes that a majority of the chamber feels the way they do, but a minority of the committee feels the way they do. So they genuinely believe that the entire body really prefers what the minority report, but they can't
the amendment. Yes,
they can't get it out of the committee, so they do it this way. So that would be and that was probably the original purpose for it. The reality, though, is most of the time now they are for messaging reasons. So at that point, once it gets to the floor, a member will move. Make a motion to accept the minority report, and then there's debate about that. And then usually the minority report fails, and then
you vote.
Then the committee report will be filed, and there's debate on the bill that actually passed out of committee.
Right.
And I don't think I have ever seen, and this is counting when Senator Johnson was in your role, who butthurt party pretty darn regularly. I don't think I ever saw a member of the majority party vote for the minority report. It's kind of
I think that is case law. They
oh
don't.
yeah, it's kind of even if you tend to vote against the bill, if you're in the majority party, it's just kind of I
Yes.
want to say common courtesy, but it's a courtesy
Right.
to vote against the minority report, which I think is too bad, but it is what it is. So that is a minority report. I know education has one coming up on a bill that we'll talk about probably next week. We just won't have time for it today.
Because by then the process will have been completed.
Yeah. So we have one on, and actually it's a bill that you filed a minority report on last year.
Yes,
so we're
I
doing
did.
it again.
Yes, I did.
Robinson is leading one this next time. I don't doesn't hurt my feelings that it's not your staff that's doing this. So that is SB 916. It does, as you noted, the minority report failed.
Right.
One of the things in the minority report, which probably would have stopped Democrats from voting for it, is it actually made it illegal for public sector unions to strike.
That's what the minority report. That's one of the things.
I love it, but I don't think that was going to work.
Yeah.
No, okay.
But there has to be a public awareness of some of these things.
Yeah. I think that's what the minority report was really.
Yes, and people have to realize the power that the unions have at this point in time.
Yeah.
And it's not always for the greatest good.
Well, and even there is a line when you file a bill, you can put on there on the sheet of paper that you file it with at whose request you are filing it. So if somebody like if a veterans group asks you, like the American Legion asks you to file a bill, that it was their idea, you could put it at the request of the American Legion. And then that goes on to OLIS. You can see who actually requested the bill. SB 916 was at the request of the AFL-CIO.
Yes.
So,
yes.
Who?
Speaking of that, you know what is really interesting is the number of bills that we are seeing that are coming across for a vote that are at the request of the governor. And I think that's something we might want to talk about in the future also. I think you and I have talked about this, but we're certainly not the first, that if you got rid of government at the request of the governor bills, if you got rid of committee bills and you got rid of agency bills, every member would probably be able to get another 5-10 bills across the finish line. And I've always said, especially committee bills, if you can't find somebody to put their name on it, the bill shouldn't happen. That's pretty chicken. Yeah. Anyway. And you also have to notice that it is causing a lot of discussion on the possibility of maybe limiting the number of bills that senator or representative can bring forward. That discussion is simmering because when you're looking at 4,000 bills and 160 days to be able to go through them all.
You've got bipartisan offenders on that one too. That is not Republicans. That's not Democrats. That's individuals. And I think you and I could both name people on both sides.
Oh my, yes.
Yeah. So right now,
personally knows several people who have got 400 or 500 bills.
So good education opportunity. A member in the long session, not the short session, the long session, pre-filing can pre-file before the session begins, and the deadlines are usually like right before Christmas.
Right.
Can file as many bills as they want. You want to file 10,000 bills, you can do it. It is then up after a certain point in the legislative session that they're limited to 5. For the Senate, 5 in the Senate, I think 3.
I think it's 3 in the House. That's what I remember.
Members
us
are limited.
being. Yeah.
Members are limited to that many at that point. And the purpose of that is because you only have so many. When you have a bill concept that you don't write it out. We don't write it out. We kind of send the idea to legislative council.
The legislative council, and they do the research on it to see, if it's any other place in the law,
right,
and how it will change the law. And
so the idea there is to make sure that you're not grinding them into a pulp, and they are working long hours already during session, and well, that would be a great idea. I would love that.
They probably would too. Yes.
Because, I mean, your office, we generally file 10 to 20 bills at most. Because we just don't have time to babysit.
Well, the other thing besides time is how many of those things are really relevant to our area, and do we see are really problems that need to be fixed legislatively?
Right. Is there really a bill does this really need a law? Yeah. We get a lot of requests for legislation, and sometimes we have to say, look, you don't need a legislator, you need a lawyer. This is a problem that really isn't going to get fixed by passing a law. You just need to sue somebody.
Right.
Which isn't always fun conversation, but it is. Okay. We need to move on.
Yes.
Or Katie will kill us.
And we also have we have to realize that we had a deadline today.
Yep.
And if it's not scheduled.
Right. If it is not, for right now, if a bill is not scheduled for a work session, which means a vote, it doesn't need to happen by today. It just needs to be scheduled by today.
It needs to be scheduled.
In policy committees, so like the education committee, the labor committee, a veterans committee, those policy committees, then that bill will generally die. Right. There are other committees like that are either joint committees or are financial budgeting committees. So revenue, ways and means.
Judiciary, ways and means.
Those are exempt from that rule. The House and Senate rules committees are also exempt for those rules. So it's not all of them. Sometimes if you have a bill that you really just needs a little bit more work, you can get the committee that it's in to refer it to like rules, and that's been a tried and true thing to do.
Right. And which you mentioned Ways and Means. I have to put in a plug for the Ways and Means Roadshow is coming to Astoria on March 28th, the Liberty Theater, 5 to 7. If you have, I think that it behooves people to come and watch and see how these decisions are arrived at. And if you have something that you want the Ways and Means to be supporting, you have the opportunity to come and have 2 or 3 minutes to be able to plea your case. And this is the first time that they have been on a roadshow in Astoria or on the North Coast since 2004. So it is an opportunity to be heard. And all of our capital construction folks and everyone that in our district has been alerted to this, so that if they have a special request, they can be there.
Right. So a couple of things to talk about on that, and we may not get to this other stuff, Suzanne. If you're going to attend and you want to speak, it is a committee register. It is a committee hearing, so you need to go to olis.oregonlegislature.gov. Look for the meeting on the 28th, 5 to 7 in Astoria of the Joint Committee on Ways and Means. And maybe Katie, if we can, I know you're listening to this, could you do that?
We have put it in the
make sure that that's there. I'm sure you know that. Right. Yeah. Shows you how much I read the newsletter. That's Katie's world. That's Katie's world. Also, keep in mind, if you're going to testify, you're probably going to get limited. It's going to be 2, maybe 3 minutes.
Right.
Depending on the
you get to 2 minutes and the hook will take you off the stage. That's it. Yeah.
If they don't have a ton of people, sometimes they'll let it go, and sometimes they'll let it go to maybe 3 minutes. But really, if you're planning on talking, 2 minutes is what you should plan for. Be
Yes.
succinct.
And when people are looking, especially at infrastructure projects that they want to go forward under capital construction, they are going to be there to put it in front of Ways and Means.
Right. You can register just like in any committee hearing. This is a committee hearing. You can register to testify virtually, but this meeting is limited for 2 hours, and preference is going to be given to the people that are there. So if they hit 2 hours and they haven't gotten to the online testimony yet, you're out of luck. So the best thing to do is register, show up with your 2 minutes to testify. That's going to be the best thing to do. Or if you can't be there, or you want to just watch it online, you can do that, and you can submit written testimony. It's also a possibility. And you can do that really at any of these meetings, because I believe, as I'm looking here, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's 6 of them. And there is on April 16th, and we'll include this later in later newsletters, there is a virtual one where where they'll start with a virtual. They'll have the hearing goes actually at the Capitol, but it's going to be focused on people who are testifying virtually. So that'll be an option. So,
yes.
We are running out of
interesting to watch. Oh yeah.
We are running out of time. We've got 2 bills that we want to talk about. Oh, yeah, do that.
I just want to say that Food for All Oregonians has done a great job of sending me postcards in support of their bill. And so this is a great way to get somebody's attention other than sending you 900 emails. This is something that is tangible, we can point to. It has people's opinions and support on it. And I want to thank them for doing this.
That's awesome. I do want to flag, we're running long, so we can't talk too much of it. Maybe if you want to give 1 or 2 comments about it, you certainly can. We do have 2 bills that got through the funnel that are in these committees that are wrapping up, and one is both of them, I believe, are in the Labor Committee. One is SB 460. This would accept pre-apprenticeship programs.
Right. It is, and it especially applies to our Tongue Point folks.
Yeah. Yep.
Because here we have people that are pre-apprentice and being required for prevailing wage jobs.
Right.
And so you have apprentices then that are not getting prevailing wage. And so there's an inequity there. And it also makes it harder for the pre-apprentice folks to be able to get employment related to this.
It really does. It makes it, not only is it not equitable for the apprentices, it just makes it much more expensive to run these pre-apprentice programs.
Right.
So it just brings things, it doesn't affect prevailing wage for jobs at all or anything like that. It just makes it so that it brings the pre-apprenticeship and the apprenticeship program in line with each other. And I think that's a win for everybody. The other one is SB 463. And this is, it seems kind of technical, but the state's insurance fund is a fund that when the state is sued and there's a judgment, they have to pay out that there's certain amount of money that is there that you guys appropriate for that. We found out that this isn't being tracked anywhere.
No,
we don't know how much we actually owe as a state,
or how many lawsuits that are pending.
I don't think, just calculating it out, I don't think the fund is solvent.
No, it's not. Actually you're looking at the $1 million judgments that are being, sent out by the courts for these lawsuits, and they only have, I think, $1 million reserve.
Yeah, it's a really big problem. So what this bill does, it just requires Department of Administrative Services to actually track these and
Right.
have a report to the legislature every session.
Every year. Yes.
Yeah. So this is not, it's not a huge
Yeah.
lift, but this is kind of was kind of amazing to us that
It's
this is
an
not a thing already.
accountability issue. And the watchword for this whole session is accountability, whether it's the ODOT or whether it's education, it's accountability. And this is accountability on the state's part.
Yeah. So 463, the one we were just talking about, it already had a public hearing, but it's getting another one because there was a Representative Reschke introduced a pretty substantial amendment that I think we definitely consider friendly. When you support, but enough to that it would be good to have another hearing, and then a work session is scheduled for that. And then 460, it has a public hearing scheduled for April Fool's Day, April 1st. So folks want to
and then hopefully
register.
That will be able to go forward and get a work session also. But it's scheduled, so hallelujah.
The work scheduled is the work session is scheduled for the 3rd. Hopefully that will happen, because sometimes they'll schedule it and then move it, or they'll schedule it and cancel it. But we definitely hope it happens.
And I've had some really good discussions with committee members as to the reasoning behind this and going forward, and I'm optimistic. I
am too. Just talking with some staff and some of the lobbyists, I think I feel pretty good about both these bills. I think we'll be able to get them across the finish line. And of course, you have others that are in some of these non-deadline committees that we'll talk about that are still alive, and we think we'll be able to get across the finish line. But these are what have come through what we call the funnel, and we're feeling pretty good about those. Senator, anything else before we wrap up? Make it quick.
No, I just want to, it's amazing when people come to visit us and see it, because we've had a lot of people. We had the realtors from Tillamook. We had the mayor of Tillamook in the Capitol this week. It's amazing how people who don't have any relation to the Capitol, when they get there, they find out how busy it is. If you have an opportunity to visit the Capitol, I think you should, but know that sometimes it'll be hard to get an appointment because we're busy all day long, every day.
Right. Even if you can't get an appointment, if you have a day and you are interested in how your state government works, it's a really good thing to. You certainly can watch it online, and that's important too. But just going in and experiencing kind of what a day in a session at the state capitol is like, you might be.
And the amazing time is 2:30 in the afternoon. When I go to the committee hearing at the end, the very last one, H, and I'm coming out of there at 2:30 in the afternoon, and you can't walk through the hallway for people and the different colors of t-shirts, of people that are passionate about bills that are going forward and are there to testify and watch. So it's really interesting.
Absolutely. Well, Senator, I think we should wrap it up there. We've got much more to talk about, and we will talk about it next week.
We could go on for a long time here, and I appreciate
we used to do that. Much. We used to do that. If you go back in the history of these, you'll see a number of them that crest an hour.
Yeah.
Because we get, especially towards the end of these things, end of the year, we get punchy. And we're pissed off at everybody at that point.
Yeah, and the number on SRO's board yesterday was 105. We have 105 days as of yesterday to go.
Excellent. Well, I can't wait. All right, Senator.
You once again.
A pleasure as always.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. We'll see you next week.
All right. Take care.